Lake Atitlan is a lake in the Guatemalan Highlands of the Sierra Madre mountain range. It is in the Sololá Department of northern Guatemala. Atitlan means "at the water" in Nahuatl. Geography. Lake Atitlan is the deepest lake in Central America, with a maximum depth of about 340 meters with an average depth of 220 meters. Its surface area is 130.1 square kilometers. It is approximately 12 by 5 kilometers with around 20 cubic kilometers of water. Atitlan is technically an endorheic lake, feeding into two nearby rivers rather than draining into the ocean. It is shaped by deep surrounding escarpments and 3 volcanoes on its southern flank. The lake basin is volcanic in origin, filling an enormous caldera formed by an eruption 84,000 years ago. The culture of the towns and villages surrounding Lake Atitlan is influenced by the Maya people. The lake is about 50 kilometers west-northwest of Antigua. It should not be confused with the smaller Lake Atitlán. Lake Atitlan is renowned as one of the most beautiful lakes in the world and is Guatemala's most important national and international tourist attraction. German explorer and naturalist Alexander von Humboldt called it the most beautiful lake in the world, and Aldous Huxley famously wrote of it in his 1934 travel book Beyond the Mexique Bay. Lake Como, it seems to me, touches on the limit of permissibly picturesque, but Atitlan is Como with additional embellishments of several immense volcanoes. It really is too much of a good thing. Agriculture. The area supports extensive coffee and avocado orchards and a variety of farm crops, most notably corn and onions. Significant agricultural crops include corn, onions, beans, squash, tomatoes, cucumbers, garlic, chiliverde, strawberries and pitahaya fruit. The lake itself is a significant food source for the largely indigenous population. Geological history. The first volcanic activity in the region occurred about 11 million years ago, and since then the region has seen 4 separate episodes of volcanic growth and caldera collapse, the most recent of which began about 1.8 million years ago and culminated in the formation of the present caldera. The lake now fills a large part of the caldera, reaching depths of up to 600 meters. The caldera-forming eruption is known as Los Chocallos eruption and ejected up to 300 cubic kilometers of tephra. The enormous eruption dispersed ash over an area of some 6 million square kilometers. It has been detected from Florida to Ecuador, and can be used as a stratigraphic marker in both the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. A chocallo is a type of bird which is often found nesting in the relatively soft ash layer. Since the end of Los Chocallos, continuing volcanic activity has built 3 volcanoes in the caldera. Volcan Atitlan lies on the southern rim of the caldera, while volcans San Pedro and Volcan Tolomon lie within the caldera. San Pedro is the oldest of the 3 and seems to have stopped erupting about 40,000 years ago. Tolomon began growing after San Pedro stopped erupting, and probably remains active, although it has not erupted in historic times. Atitlan has developed almost entirely in the last 10,000 years and remains active, with its most recent eruption having occurred in 1853. On February 4, 1976, a massive earthquake struck Guatemala, killing more than 26,000 people. The earthquake fractured the lake bed and caused subsurface drainage from the lake, allowing the water level to drop 2 meters within 1 month. Ecological history. In 1955, the area around Lake Atitlan became a national park. The lake was mostly unknown to the rest of the world, and Guatemala was seeking ways to increase tourism and boost the local economy. It was suggested by Pan American World Airways that stocking the lake with a fish prized by anglers would be a way to do just that. As a result, an exotic non-native species, the black bass, was introduced into the lake in 1958. The bass quickly took to its new home and caused a radical change in the species composition of the lake. The predatory bass caused the elimination of more than two-thirds of the native fish species in the lake and contributed to the extinction of the Atitlan grebe, a rare bird that lived only in the vicinity of Lake Atitlan. A unique aspect of the climate is what is referred to as zoocomal. This wind is common late morning and afternoon across the lake. It is said to be the encounter of warm winds from Pacific meeting colder winds from the north. In August 2015, a thick bloom of algae known as Microcystis cyanobacteria reappeared in Lake Atitlan. The first major occurrence was in 2009. Bureaucratic red tape has been blamed for the lack of action to save the lake. If current activities continue unchecked, the toxification of the lake will make it unsuitable for human use. Culture. The lake is surrounded by many villages in which Maya culture is still prevalent and traditional dress is worn. The Maya people of Atitlan are predominantly Tutuhi and Kaqchikel. During the Spanish conquest of the Americas, the Kaqchikel initially allied themselves with the invaders to defeat the historic enemies, the Tutuhi and Kaish Maya, but were themselves conquered and subdued when they refused to pay tribute to the Spanish. Santiago Atitlan is the largest of the lakeside communities, and it is noted for its worship of Maximon, an idol formed by the fusion of traditional Mayan deities, Catholic saints, and conquistador legends. The institutionalized effigy of Maximon is under the control of a local religious brotherhood and resides in various houses of its membership during the course of a year, being most ceremonially moved in a grand procession during Semana Santa. Several towns in Guatemala have similar cults, most notably the cult of San Simon in Zunil. While Maya culture is predominant in most lakeside communities, Panajachel has been overwhelmed over the years by Guatemalan and foreign tourists. It attracted many hippies in the 1960s, and although the Civil War caused many foreigners to leave, the end of hostilities in 1996 saw visitor numbers boom again, and the town's economy is almost entirely reliant on tourism today. Several Mayan archaeological sites have been found at the lake. Sambarsh, located approximately 55 feet below the current lake level, appears to be from at least the pre-classic period. There are remains of multiple groups of buildings, including one particular group of large buildings that are believed to have been the city center. A second site, Chutanamit, where the remains of a city were found, was discovered by local fishermen who noticed what appeared to be a city underwater. During subsequent investigations, pottery shards were recovered from the site by divers, which enabled the dating of the site to the late pre-classic period. A project titled Underwater Archaeology in the Lake Atitlan, Sambarj 2003 Guatemala was recently approved by the government of Guatemala in cooperation with Fundación Albenga and the Lake Museum in Atitlan. Because of the concerns of a private organization as is the Lake Museum in Atitlan, the need to start the exploration of the inland waters in Guatemala was analyzed. There is no road that circles the lake. Communities are reached by boat or roads from the mountains that may have brief extensions along the shore. Santa Cruz, La Laguna and Jablito can only be reached by boat. Santa Catarina Palapo and San Antonio Palapo are linked by road to Panajachel. Main places otherwise are Santa Clara La Laguna and San Pedro La Laguna in the west, Santiago Atitlan in the south, Cerro Dorado on the southeast, and San Lucas Tolomon in the east. Recent studies indicate that a ceremonial site named Samabaj was located on an island about 500 meters long in Lake Atitlan. The site was revered for its striking connection to the Popol Vuh of the Mayan peoples. Guatemalan Civil War. During the Guatemalan Civil War, the lake was the scene of many terrible human rights abuses as the government pursued a scorched earth policy. Indigenous people were assumed to be universally supportive of the guerrillas who were fighting against the government, and were targeted for brutal reprisals. At least 300 Maya from Santiago Atitlan are believed to have disappeared during the conflict. Two events of this era made international news. One was the assassination of Stanley Rother, a missionary from Oklahoma, in the church at Santiago Atitlan in 1981. In 1990, a spontaneous protest march to the army base on the edge of town was met by gunfire, resulting in the death of 11 unarmed civilians. International pressure forced the Guatemalan government to close the base and declare Santiago Atitlan a military-free zone. The memorial commemorating the massacre was damaged in the 2005 mudslide. Hurricane. Torrential rains from Hurricane Stan caused extensive damage throughout Guatemala in early October 2005, particularly around Lake Atitlan. A massive landslide buried the lakeside village of Panajachel, causing the death of as many as 1,400 residents, leaving 5,000 homeless, and many bodies buried under tons of earth. Following this event, Diego Esquina Mendoza, the mayor of Santiago Atitlan, declared the community a mass gravesite. Those buried by the mudslide may never be rescued. Here they will stay buried under 5 meters of mud. Panajachel is now a cemetery. 4.5 years after Hurricane Stan, Tropical Storm Agatha dropped even more rainfall, causing extensive damages to the region, resulting in dozens of deaths between San Lucas Tolomon and San Antonio Palapo. Since then, roads have been reopened and travel to the region has returned to normal. Gallery.